First question about the earnings. I wonder if you think how seriously your earnings were affected by the COVID pandemic, the lockdowns not only here in Germany but around the world, and how seriously do you think this quarter's earnings will be hit by the pandemic as well?
Well, I mean, first of all, our last quarter, our fiscal Q1, obviously has been a very strong quarter. Our bookings were up 15%, revenues up 7%, operational profit up 39% in a COVID quarter in the middle of a second wave. And don't forget that we've been comparing ourselves with those numbers year over year on a pandemic-free quarter in 2020. So I believe we've been well underway in what we wanted to achieve. So that's the good news. The other news, of course, is if we look forward to the next quarters to come, it's very uncertain what the global development will do in terms of both supply chain as well as, of course, on the demand side. So I think we are well advised, to really play it by ear, quarter by quarter. We are structurally well underway. That also shows if we compare our numbers with the peer performance. But then again, the jury is still out on what the pandemic will look like in 6 months from now.
How serious do you think this pandemic is going to change the way Siemens does business? I mean, how much have you had to change already, and which changes do you expect to stick?
Well, I mean, first of all, we clearly do see that Siemens, in its part of the value chain, has been performing well. We learned a lot from the first wave in March, April, which we can apply now. So we hardly had any interruptions anywhere, neither in the supply chain, nor in production, nor in the interaction in R&D and the G&A. Even sales was working well through virtual meetings. And we very, very much pushed the digital services, remote services with our customers, obviously due to the fact that we were limited in accessing the sites. So what we have learned in general in our industry is that the industrial digitalization has gotten a big push. And that's, of course, plays into our cards, since we are by far the number one in the digital industries and manufacturing simulation. So that's the good news. But then again, we are not alone in the world. We've got customers and suppliers which we desperately need in order to sell our products. And so that's why I was careful about what the demand side will do going forward. We must not forget we are in the capital goods industry. And customers in the capital goods industry, they invest if they've got trust in what they expect to come. And that's why it's so important that we get the vaccine rolled out to everybody and make sure that there is sort of certainty again on what to expect in the future in terms of health and safety matters.
Do you have confidence that Europe can roll out the vaccine in a timely fashion, relative to the U.S. and the U.K., the process that the European Commission made to get this vaccine seems much slower and more disorganized?
Well, the good thing is that the European Union has tried to be a real European Union, and stick together with all the member countries and make this a European effort. That's the good news, because typically what you see, there's a lot of nationalism if it comes to health and safety of the people, and potentially understandable. Now, so that's the good news. What we see, though, is that the European Union is far away from being able to execute well on what they decide. And that's the area where we need significant improvement, because otherwise we fall back and every country does its own thing, which is not a good idea, because typically if you have a pandemic, which obviously by nature is global, the global community ought to stick together and get the best out of it. So I think we are still at the very beginning. What I believe is that there will be a massive supply ramp up in the next quarter, and then we need to organize execution well. So I'm meaningfully optimistic that by May, June, we will have 50 to 60% of the population, even in Europe, vaccinated, and that's hopefully, then a good start for the second half of the calendar year.
Is Europe, being Europe, going to provide one more gigantic customer for Siemens? I mean, can you see the European Union starting to make purchases in industrial goods, make purchases as a group, you know, in defense, et cetera?
Well, I think there are other priorities at this point in time. First of all, we've seen Asia rolling, especially China. We're up 22% on the business, 22% in the last quarter in China. So it seems that China again, you know, is saving the world economy after it did the same thing in the financial crisis. And so they are, you know what they do, they are well organized, and they go full steam ahead. And that's what we focus on. Second is over in the United States. They have been pretty busy with their election thing, and now they are done with that one. They have trillions of dollars now to get to work in infrastructure investments such as renewable energy or public transportation. So we focus on that a lot because this is the area where we can help the most. And then Europe, I would rather, you know, go with our customers segment by segment because many of them are global businesses or even part of a supply chain which we are supplying to. So the Europeans still need to come up with a meaningful economic stimulus package which is tangible enough in order to structure it well and to give some forecast what that means for companies like us.
Does China's Made in China 2025 plan present a direct threat to Siemens and to Germany's preeminence in advanced manufacturing?
Well, it presents a massive opportunity to all the companies which are global in nature but local in execution. I mean, we've got 40,000 people in China, massive revenues and investment, so we do believe that we can actually benefit from more localization. Now, whether or not this is a good thing for export-oriented countries such as Germany, you know, it remains to be seen because the most powerful part of the German economy is what we call the Mittelstand, the smaller and medium enterprises. They typically cannot afford to invest in every country with new production or R&D sites as the global companies do. So we need to yet see on how they will deal with the further push on localization in both, by the way, in China as well as in the United States.
Let me finally ask you, you've dealt with this pandemic. How do you deal with the coming pandemic, the climate change issue? You have a unique vantage point at the head of one of the biggest industrial firms in the world. Do you think we're going to be able to dodge this bullet?
Well, I mean, that's probably the biggest ticket, which is where the jury is out on whether or not the global society, global leadership has learned anything from the pandemic, so that we get a new setup after COVID-19 and build a better world. There is all the opportunities to do so. And from what we hear now from the new leadership in the United States, you know, coming back to the Paris Agreement is a very good thing. Wanting to massively push renewable energies is a very good thing. So I do believe that there has been a socio-economic change of mindset to push that further. By the same token, though, you know, going from conventional to renewable energy also has its pain points. You know, Siemens Energy just announced a big restructuring because we went out of coal and we are going full steam renewable. And if you do the same amount of electricity in renewables as compared to fossil, you only need half of the people. And so this is also something we need to integrate as thoughtful leaders. There is a despair in interest between labor, sustainability, and of course also shareholder return. And that's, you know, is the task of leadership. So I'm optimistic that we will be able to create a better world. We've got all the tools and technology it takes. It is about leadership to make it work.
Joe, thanks very much.
Absolutely.
And best of luck in whatever you attempt next. Joe Kaeser there, the CEO, outgoing CEO of Siemens. Thanks.
Thank you.